One of the most interesting and sad parts of human actions is how some people can have something wonderful and never see its worth until it is gone. When we talk about a man with a narcissistic personality losing someone who truly cared for him, the first thing we must grasp is that it does not happen in a big sudden moment. It is not like he wakes up one morning and thinks, I made a mistake. No, it is much more complex, and it starts long before the connection is finished. A narcissistic man lives inside a false world. He creates a mental space that centers on power and being better than others. To people outside, he might seem sure of himself, attractive, even fascinating. He is the kind of person who easily draws others in, but that charm is a cover. It is carefully made to hide a weak, unsure sense of self that depends completely on how others see him. Deep down, he does not believe he is valuable unless it is shown back to him through praise or approval. So when someone truly loves him, not for his image, not for his attractive ways, but for his real self, it is almost impossible for him to understand. True affection does not fit easily into his world because it needs openness. It asks for truth, modesty, and mutual respect. These are all the things that threaten his false idea of power. Instead of accepting that love, he starts to test it, to push its limits. He wants to see how far it will go before it breaks. He mistakes deep care for weakness and kindness for simply agreeing with him. This situation unfolds slowly at first. He might ignore his partner's needs, make fun of their feelings, or treat their love as something that will always be there. It is not that he does not see their love. It is that he expects it to be permanent. In his mind, he is the one with the power, the one who chooses when to give and when to take away. And that false sense of power is exciting. It boosts his ego. It assures him that he cannot be hurt. But what he fails to see, and what is so strangely true about the mind, is that this false idea is built on the very love he is taking for granted. The admiration, the emotional work, the forgiveness, all of it forms the support structure of his self-worth. When he starts to damage that, when he destroys the trust and safety that love gives, he is not just hurting the other person, he is breaking down the basis of his own identity. There is a moment, though he does not notice it yet, when the emotional energy begins to change. The person who loved him starts to pull back, not because they are angry, but because they are tired. They start to see the pattern, to feel the emptiness behind the charm, and something inside them shifts. The love that once supported him starts to disappear, and in that moment, without knowing it, he loses his hold. The narcissistic man needs to be the most important thing in someone else's emotional life. When that strong pull weakens, when his words no longer affect them, when his tricks stop working, he begins to feel something he rarely admits, fear. But instead of dealing with that fear, he holds tighter to the false idea. He tells himself that he does not need anyone, that he can find someone new to replace what he lost, that love is just a deal, not a real connection. What makes this so sad is that he really believes his own story until life makes him see the faults. The quiet feels different when the person who used to care no longer replies. The reflection that once showed him praise now shows nothing at all. And suddenly, the false world he built so carefully starts to break apart because of its own weight. There is a deep thought here worth pausing on. When a person creates their sense of self only around power and how they are seen, they become dependent on the very people they try to control. It is a hidden kind of reliance, one they would never admit, but it is real. The moment those people leave, the narcissist's world starts to fall apart, because without approval from others, the person he shows to the world does not exist. The moment of understanding does not hit a narcissistic man like a sudden shock. It comes in slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed, until one day he realizes that something important is missing. The energy that once fed him, the constant support and attention, the safe place to land after every drama he caused, it is gone. And the quiet that takes its place is very loud. It is in that quiet that the truth starts to appear, not all at once, not clearly, but as a kind of discomfort he cannot name. At first, he tries to explain it away. He tells himself he is fine, that she was not that special, that he is better off. But when someone who truly loved him walks away, something in his world changes. The mirror that used to reflect praise back at him is gone. And without that reflection, his sense of self, the one built on outside approval, starts to crack. What is so interesting about the mind is that narcissists rarely know love when they have it because their emotional compass is broken. They see attention as deep care and obedience as love. True love does not register in the same way because it asks for equality, and equality threatens their power. So while they are in the relationship, they cannot fully see it. But when it is gone, when the person who once steadied their chaos suddenly goes quiet, that is when reality begins to set in. You can almost picture it. He is looking through his phone, looking at the old messages, the pictures, perhaps replaying moments he used to ignore, and it is not longing that hits him. It is recognition, the understanding that what he thought was normal was actually special, the kind of love that was patient, forgiving, strong, the kind of love that saw the parts of him even he refused to face, and for the first time he starts to understand that he did not lose a partner. He lost his reflection in the eyes of someone who believed in him despite his faults. This understanding does not come with feeling for others right away. That is the difficult part. It starts as pain focused on himself, a kind of fear that he no longer has access to the person who proved his worth. But slowly, as the quiet lasts, that pain grows deeper. It starts to turn into awareness. He notices that the people he replaces her with do not feel the same. The praise feels empty. The connection lacks meaning. The talks do not challenge him. The affection does not settle him. Everything feels like a deal because for the first time he is forced to face the emptiness he has been covering with noise. And here is where the deeper change begins. He starts to realize that love is not a tool he can control. It is not something that listens to his ego or comes back when he wants it to. Love in its real form has limits. It leaves when it is taken for granted. It stops giving when it is not seen. And that is what shocks him most, that the person he once believed would never leave actually did. There is an internal moment of truth that happens here. For a narcissistic man, power is his safety net. The belief that he can decide how others see him, how they feel about him, gives him a sense of strength. But when someone truly disconnects emotionally, mentally, deeply, that false idea is broken. No amount of charm, guilt, or manipulation can bring her back. And for someone who has lived his life arranging the feelings of others, that loss of influence feels like death. That is when the true change begins, not the fake kind, not the tearful apology meant to gain sympathy, but the quiet, scary awareness that he is alone with himself. Perhaps for the first time, he is not being shown back his image through praise or love. He is looking at his own reflection, raw, uncovered, and alone. And what he sees there can be too much to bear. The faults he spent years covering with charm, the insecurities he has hidden under arrogance, all of it surfaces. Because love, especially real love, acts like a mirror. It shows back both the best and the worst parts of us. And when that mirror goes away, we are forced to face who we really are. That face-off is where some men struggle greatly. They try to find replacements for what they lost, to make the false idea of love again without ever facing the reason they lost it. Others, though fewer, start to see the pattern. They begin to realize that the one thing that is the same in their failed connections is not the people who left, it is themselves. That is the key difference between regret and awareness. Regret is about missing the comfort. Awareness is about understanding the reason. The truth is, this understanding does not save him. Awareness does not erase the harm done. But it is the first time he has truly experienced what realness feels like. It is brief, but it is real. He realizes that love is not about power. It is about connection. It is not about being praised. It is about being understood. And he is suddenly aware that all the approval in the world cannot fill the empty space left by the one person who saw him clearly and still chose to stay until she could not anymore. What is striking about a narcissistic man's path after losing someone who truly loved him is that his pain does not come from lost love itself. It comes from the lack of outside approval. In the beginning, he does not mourn the person, he mourns the reflection of himself that used to shine in her eyes. That is the emotional hole behind the false front, an emptiness that he spent his whole life trying to fill without ever admitting it exists. When you take away the arrogance, the control, the self-importance, what is left is not strength, it is emptiness. And that emptiness is terrifying because it reveals how little of his emotional life is truly his own. Everything he has built, the confidence, the charm, the image, has been a show meant to keep that hole hidden, even from himself. But when someone truly loves him, she does not love the show. She sees through it. She reaches for the person behind it. And for a while, that feels amazing because she is giving him something no one else has, real acceptance. But instead of accepting it, he starts to feel smothered by it. Real love requires openness. And for someone who has built his identity on power, openness feels like destruction. He does not know how to handle being seen so clearly, so he pushes back. He drives her away, makes fun of her feelings, or criticizes her love. Anything to get back control, to create emotional distance again. It is easier to live inside the false idea of being better than to risk feeling small, unworthy, or dependent. But every time he does this, he damages the very thing that gives his life meaning, the human link that once made him feel alive. In terms of the mind, this is the strange contradiction of narcissism. The narcissist badly wants to be loved, but is terrified of love at the same time. He craves a deep emotional link, but he is also programmed to destroy it because a real connection threatens his weak sense of power. It forces him to face his own emotional limits. It reveals the parts of him he has spent his entire life denying, the insecurity, the shame, the fear of being ordinary. And yet, once she is gone, once her presence no longer softens his ego, that emotional hole becomes too much to handle. He starts to think about moments he used to ignore. The way she listened, the way she cared, even when he did not deserve it, the way she gave him kindness, not because he earned it, but because she believed he could be better. And in those memories, he begins to realize something important. What she gave him was not just love, it was meaning. He starts to feel the weight of that meaning when he tries to find it elsewhere. He goes out with people, he flirts, he surrounds himself with attention, but nothing feels the same. Every compliment feels empty, every smile temporary. Because what she offered was not praise, it was closeness. She saw him not as a symbol of strength, but as a human being. And once you have been seen like that, it is impossible to go back to shallow connections. The emotional hole grows bigger because he does not know how to fill it from inside himself. He has built his life on getting approval from others, not making it from his own self-worth. That is why losing her feels like losing himself, because she was the mirror that made him feel real. Without her, he is forced to face a truth he has avoided his entire life, that love and outside praise are not the same thing. Outside praise feeds the ego. Love helps the tired soul. From a deeper perspective, this understanding is deeply challenging. It questions his whole way of seeing the world. He spent years believing that power keeps him safe, that to be strong means never needing anyone. But now he understands that what he called strength was actually a shield. And a shield not only keeps danger out, it keeps love out too. The emotional hole is not just being lonely. It is a face-off with the self. It is that unsettling moment when the noise stops and he is left with only his own thoughts. And for the first time, those thoughts are not pleasing. They are honest. They are uncomfortable. They ask questions he does not want to answer. Why did I push her away? Why was her love not enough? Why do I always ruin what I say I want? And beneath those questions lies the deeper truth that love was never the problem. His inability to take it was because real love does not feed the ego. It demands honesty. It calls out the false self and asks for the real one to come forward. And for someone who has spent a lifetime hiding behind a carefully made image, that is too much to bear. But here is the turning point. That same unbearable emptiness is also the way to growth. Pain has a way of removing the layers of illusion. When he finally stops running from the emptiness and looks into it, he has a chance, perhaps for the first time, to see what has been missing all along. Not her approval, but his own human nature. There is a point in every story like this where the energy shifts. Up until now, everything has centered around him, his ego, his power, his false idea. But when the person who truly loved him starts to take back her own strength, everything changes. And this is where the story stops being about loss and starts being about being set free. At first, she does not even realize it is happening. The process is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, steady, and very personal. It begins the moment she decides to stop explaining herself, The moment she understands that love should not hurt like this, that loving someone does not mean forgetting herself in the process, that being kind does not mean putting up with cruelty. And it is in that understanding that her strength starts to awaken. For so long, her world has turned around his moods, his agreement, his approval. She has been the keeper of his ego, always trying to prove her love, hoping that if she just says the right thing or does the right thing, he will finally see her. But when you love someone who cannot truly love you back, your life slowly becomes an emotional trade off, a constant effort to earn something that should be freely given. When she finally sees that truth, it is like a fog beginning to lift. She starts to remember what it felt like to think clearly, to breathe fully, to live without being extremely cautious. That is when the power balance begins to reverse, not because she fights him, but because she stops playing the game completely. And that is what truly stops a narcissist: quietness, distance, emotional lack of reaction. He is used to reactions, anger, tears, explanations. Those feelings support him. They keep him at the center of her world. But when she becomes calm, when she no longer reacts, when she simply chooses peace over problems, he loses access to the control that defined their relationship. This change does not come from hate. It comes from self-respect. It is the kind of strength that grows from deep hurt, the kind that says, I can love you and still walk away. I can forgive you and still choose myself. And that is what he never expected. He always thought her love was endless, that her kindness would keep her tied to him. But love without limits is not love. It is abandoning yourself. And she finally sees that. There is something deeply empowering about that moment, because the healing process after a connection with a narcissist is not about revenge or proving a point. It is about finding her own identity again. It is about learning how to live without being defined by someone else's chaos. It is about remembering that peace is not boring, it is sacred. In terms of the mind, what is happening here is a reclaiming of her own power. For so long, her nervous system has been trained to react to crisis, to guess his moods, to handle his feelings, to keep the peace at any cost. When she starts to step away, she is not just leaving a relationship, she is reshaping her mind. She is teaching herself that safety is not something she has to earn, it is something she deserves. And as she rebuilds, something unexpected happens. The good qualities he once used against her, her deep feeling for others, her patience, her loyalty, become her greatest strengths. They no longer serve his ego, they serve her healing. What used to be tools for surviving become tools for change. She begins to realize that the love she gave him was not wasted. It taught her the depth of her own heart. It showed her that she is capable of wonderful kindness, even when faced with cruelty. And that ability to love, when turned inward, becomes unstoppable. It is what allows her to rebuild without being bitter, to rise without being resentful. From the outside, it might look like she has simply moved on, but inside, something much deeper is happening. She is no longer looking for outside approval to prove she is good enough. She is no longer chasing love to prove she is worthy. She is learning that peace is not found in being chosen, it is found in choosing herself. Meanwhile, he is watching. He does not say it, but he feels the change. He senses her distance. The energy that once fed him is gone. He tries to reach for her, not because he has changed, but because he cannot stand the loss of control. He tests her new limits, maybe with apologies, maybe with memories, but this time she sees through it. Because once you have experienced your own freedom, manipulation feels suffocating. There is a quiet strength in her new power. She does not need to prove anything. She does not need final words from him. The final word is in the calm. The lesson is in the quiet. And that is what makes her power so deep. It is not a reaction. It is firmly rooted. It does not shout. It simply stands. Regret is a strange feeling. It does not always come rushing in all at once. Sometimes it stays in the quiet moments, in the empty spaces between memories. For the narcissistic man, the regret that follows the loss of someone who truly loved him does not feel like sadness in the usual way. It is not the simple, painful ache of missing someone. It is heavier. It is empty, because what he is mourning is not just the person. It is the reflection of himself that he can no longer find. When things settle down and the attention goes away, he starts to feel it, that uncomfortable emptiness creeping back in, the one he spent years covering under approval, noise, and power. He looks around and realizes that all the admiration in the world cannot bring back what he destroyed. The relationships he tries to build afterward feel shallow, like simple deals, and lifeless compared to what he once had. For the first time, he can feel the difference between being deeply praised and being loved. And that difference cuts deep. He starts to remember the things he never noticed before. The way she listened to him without judging. The way she stayed by him even when he was impossible to love. The way she made him feel safe enough for brief moments to let his guard down. But now those moments are not comforting. They bother him because he knows they will never happen again. He did not just lose a person. He lost the one person who saw him and stayed. And once someone who truly loves you walks away, that kind of love does not come back. Not because she stopped caring, but because she learned the price of loving someone who refuses to care for themselves. This is the point where the narcissistic man faces what deep thinkers might call the whole of self. For so long, his identity has been defined by outside images, by how others see him, need him, praise him. When that image goes away, he is forced to face the reality beneath it. There is nothing solid there. The image he created so carefully begins to break down under the weight of truth. And the truth is, he never built himself from the inside out. He constructed himself from the outside in. He tells himself he is fine, that he is better off, that she will regret leaving him. It is his last try at control to change the story so he does not have to face the truth. But deep down, he knows, he feels it every time her name comes up, every time he meets someone new who does not understand him the way she did. The emptiness becomes a kind of quiet suffering, not loud enough to completely break him, but constant enough to remind him of what he lost. What makes this regret so hard to bear is that it cannot be undone. He cannot take back the moments he ignored her feelings. He cannot take back the words that made her pain seem small. He cannot erase the nights she cried herself to sleep, wondering if she was good enough. Those memories become constant reminders of a love he will never be worthy of again, not because she held it back, but because he never learned how to accept it. Here is where the difference between regret and real improvement becomes clear. Regret is about loss. Real improvement requires growth. A narcissistic man might regret losing her, but unless he is willing to break down the ego that destroyed the relationship, he cannot truly change. And most do not, because real transformation demands the one thing he has avoided his entire life, taking responsibility. It means facing the fact that love is not something he can control, that being greatly admired is not the same as being truly connected, and that power without kindness for others is nothing more than loneliness in disguise. Some men reach that understanding and use it to change. They face the harm they have caused, the emotional walls they have built, and the fears that drive them. They do the difficult work not to win her back, but to become someone capable of love. But many do not. Many stay stuck in the same cycle, searching for new sources of outside approval, telling themselves they have moved on while secretly bothered by the one who got away, because deep down they know what they lost was not replaceable. You cannot copy real love. You cannot make a connection. You cannot buy peace. And you cannot fake being real. The love he lost was rare, the kind that comes from someone who sees beyond the surface and chooses to stay anyway. Losing that is like losing the last small light in a room you have spent your life pretending is not dark. And what is left is regret, not just for losing her, but for never learning how to love her while she was still there. That is the sad irony. He spends his life seeking what he has already destroyed, never realizing that the thing he is searching for, approval, peace, meaning, is not something he can take from others. It is something he has to build within himself. But for a man defined by ego, that understanding feels too much to bear. Meanwhile, she is already free. Her peace is not revenge. Her healing is not about proving him wrong. It is simply the quiet win of someone who survived being unseen and learned to see herself again. And that is what truly breaks him, not her absence, but her happiness. The realization that she can succeed without him, that the world did not revolve around his approval, is the final blow to his false idea of control. From a deeper view, his tragedy is not that he lost love, it is that he never learned how to recognize it when it was right in front of him. And in that way, his punishment is caused by himself, a lifetime of small victories and empty connections that will never be as good as what he once had and carelessly ruined. He will tell the story 1,000 times, changing it in his mind to make himself the hero. But deep down, he knows the truth does not leave. It stays in the quiet moments when the noise stops, when the phone is silent, when the crowd is gone. It whispers the same message again and again. You had something real and you lost it. Because the deepest regret a man can feel is not that she walked away. It is that when he finally understood what love truly was, she was already gone.